right, would you gentlemen please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? You would, and then we're very honored to have the Reverend Dr. Marlene Pedigo from the Eagle Creek Evangelical Friends Church, who will bless us before we open the meeting. So, gentlemen, if you will lead us, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
And if you would remain standing for prayer. First, I'd like to bring you greetings from Eagle Creek Friends Meeting. It's one of the oldest Friends historic churches in the city of Westfield, gathered in 1840 as settlers moved into this area from North Carolina. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to come together tonight. We thank you for the blessings in our own lives, that of our family, our community, and our country. And we particularly want to thank you for the freedoms that we enjoy in this, the United States of America. We pray, Lord, that you would give wisdom and guidance to the members of the City Council and those gathered here tonight as they make decisions on behalf of our community. And we pray for this Christmas season that we all might be aware of how we can reach out to those around us in need to be the light of Christ in our community. We pray these things in the name of Christ Jesus, the Prince of Peace. Amen.
Amen.
You may be seated.
Thank you so much. And thank you for representing the Friends Church. What a huge part of the history you have all served in our city of Westfield. We're most grateful. So, Mr. Ake, it's your meeting, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor. Would the clerk please note the presence of a quorum?
Here.
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 Thank you. There are no announced changes to the agenda, so what you had in the back of the room will be our agenda for this evening. And so we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. And I would entertain a motion to approve minutes of November 12th, 2018. I would note also that I made some corrections to the minutes and sent all counselors a copy of my corrections, and I think they've been incorporated. Is that correct? Right. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion to approve council minutes.
Move to approve November 12th council minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Hoover to approve the minutes as stated, and I have a second by Joe Edwards. Is there any additions or corrections to be noted? All right, hearing none, in order to approve the minutes, please signify it by saying aye, as the minutes were stated, and the motion is before us.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. The minutes are approved 6-0. All right, we'll move on to approval of claims. At this time, you've had a chance to review the docket. I'd ask for approval of a motion to approve claims as stated.
So moved.
I have a motion by Cindy Spoljarek. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Horkey. These can be approved by voice vote in a similar fashion. Oh, are there any additions or corrections or questions to be noted before we proceed to a vote? All right, hearing none, we have a motion to approve claims as stated before us. Please signify by saying aye if you approve that motion.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Claims are approved. Thank you. At this time, we have a special presentation to be made by Mayor Cook, and he will present the Distinguished Citizen Certificate to Mrs. Becky Ragsdale. I'm excited about this, Mayor.
Very often. We have a true hero in our midst here tonight that I'd like to introduce you to. About 2 weeks ago, I got a very formal-looking envelope say he identified himself as a forensic psychiatrist. I get it, forensic part, we deal with that in the city quite a bit, that didn't scare me a whole lot. And then I see the psychiatry part, and I'm really beginning to wonder what is in store. But it was a letter of absolute joy. Becky, would you join me up here, please? Ladies and gentlemen, this is Becky Ragsdale, a Westfield resident in Brookside. And your story is such that says here this was in October. You must have been out in front of your house and you saw what? Tell me.
This little child was, first, my neighbor and I really couldn't identify it. That maybe it's an animal or something. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, that's a kid. And just probably maybe 12 months, barely walking. He had no coat on, no shoes on, and he's at the intersection, and they didn't realize what was going on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we gotta get that kid out of the street and get safety, or he's gonna get run over by a car because there's lots of construction going on. And so I immediately just ran down there, and at the same time, a car was coming down, the street, and, I just did what I thought being a normal, sensible, responsible human being was going to consider myself a hero, and I was just waving my arms saying, stop, 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 because I was trying to get the attention of the car that was coming down the street, and just as I picked the little boy up, she filled her in, and she goes, oh my gosh, I didn't see the child, and I only saw you, and I just picked him up, and I thought, okay, who does he belong to? And at first I thought, I don't know if I was really ready to relinquish him, because I thought, who lets this kid? And I picked him up, and I found, his homeowner, or his mother, I guess, and then I handed him off, and thankfully he wasn't hurt.
What in the world did the mother have to say to you?
She was like, oh my gosh, thank you. But the driver of the car was just like, oh my gosh, I was alone, and who knows? I think she was grateful, but at the same time, she was just shocked because how we got out of her spot, I don't know. But like I said, I don't feel like I'm a hero. I appreciate everybody here, all the married girls. Thank you so much.
These are caring girls back
Yeah,
here.
that's my
Your,
tennis.
your tennis
My
team.
tennis girls, yeah. So
Wow,
I appreciate
what
you
an
guys,
honor.
but I would have done the same thing if any of those guys had their safety and endeavors
Sure you
in
would.
the same. But I don't consider myself a hero and using the trouble on the guard.
Well, I got the letter, and we decided we had to do something.
Well, but like I said, I just did what any,
So you saved that life, and
you know.
the mother and the driver of the car, whose life would have been changed forever, you affected 3 people with your action. Fantastic.
Just reacted.
You reacted. Well, I don't know that I could have reacted that quick. That is just wonderful. So, we're going to do a proclamation. How's that for you? Because, we have to do whereases, that's what I think to do. So whereas, Becky Ragsdale of Westfield, Indiana, is honored on this date for her heroism, yes, and her life as a distinguished citizen of our city. We have a rather thick resume of tennis accomplishments, and I understand, is this your husband?
My husband, Dr. Marshall, and my sister.
Very good.
Yeah.
Tell the
And all the,
sisters.
all
sometimes those things seem more important than what we're about to do tonight. So we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We know it's a good example for the Scouts and the tennis team, what you did, and we're very grateful you were able to be there at that time. Without any further ado, we'll dismiss old business since we have no items under old business, and we'll move right into our new business for the evening.
Begs the question, what have you been doing?
I would ask the same of you, Mayor. Thank you very much. We're looking ahead to next year and planning because it's a very exciting time here in Westfield. The first item under new business that we'll deal with is Resolution 18-115, a tax abatement deduction for the Third Dimension Industrial 3D Printing Company. Amanda, you are presenting tonight.
Yes.
Welcome.
Good evening. President, members of the council, for the record, my name is Amanda Rebedu with Economic Development Department. Third Dimension Industrial 3D Printing has filed a personal property abatement request for an investment of approximately $10 million in manufacturing equipment in their new facility that will occupy about 20,000 square feet of the Westfield Business Center, a newly finished building over on Oak Ridge Road just north of 169th. Representing Third Dimension is Alexis Souter with Kat Sapper & Miller, and she'll be giving a short presentation on the nature of the business and the proposed project at the conclusion of my summary. This site is currently in an economic revitalization area, and which was approved in 2008. Since the economic revitalization area has already been established, council may consider and adopt the tax abatement for Third Dimension this evening. The request is for a 5-year personal property abatement, which is structured the same as previously approved personal property abatement requests. With the investment of $10 million into this new building, we anticipate $4.6 million in assessed value. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Alexis for her presentation.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? All right.
Hi, Council. As Amanda said, my name is Alexis Souter. I am a project manager at KSM Location Advisors, which is a national site selection and incentives consulting firm affiliated with Kat Sapper Miller here in Indianapolis. Definitely want to thank you for the opportunity for Bob and I to present this evening, present our project. And request, this is Bob Markley. Wanted to have him definitely take advantage of the opportunity to present before you all. We've been working with Bob for quite some time now, just as it relates to his existing operation in Indianapolis. He is busting at the seams, quite literally, and is at capacity. So as we're kind of evaluating his growth strategy and what that means for the future location of Third Dimension's headquarters, would like for that to occur in Westfield. So I'm going to turn it over really quickly to Bob. He can talk to you in way greater detail, much better than I can, about 3D printing, also known as additive manufacturing, and then I'll take it back over and kind of get into some of the metrics of the project in terms of investment and jobs. So
Thank you.
here's Bob.
Good evening. I'd like to thank you. I think what she meant to say was I can bore you in much greater detail about additive manufacturing. So I started Third Dimension Industrial 3D Printing Company in May of 2013. We are one of the country's premier metal additive manufacturing groups. There's very few of us in the United States, but we are working on extraordinarily advanced projects, quite a bit of DoD work, aerospace, automotive. Unfortunately, I can't give you many examples of our clients just due to the nature of the business, but I do get to show you one of the projects that has been one of the, here we go, the Callista Grid faucet. I know, faucets. We work on DoD, advanced aerospace, and we get to show you faucets. But this is a great example of some of the work that we're doing, the team is doing. This faucet could not be made in any other way. We're using metal additive manufacturing, a process whereby we lay down a very thin layer of powder, then use a high-powered laser to micro-weld where we want the part to form. So very advanced. It opens up a whole new world of geometries. GE is taking significant advantage of this in their next generation, or actually current generation engines. On some of their next gen, they've taken 800 some, I believe it's 800 some parts, broken it down into 17. So that shows you the power of this technology. we're pushing that forward as an independent service bureau, working with some of the largest names in the Fortune 500. And as Alexis said, we're busting out the seams. We're currently located in Park 100 in about 4,500 square feet, and we're looking to move to 27,000 up here in Westfield. I have employees that live up here in Westfield. I grew up in Carmel, but spent a lot of time over on Cary Road at the Westfield Youth Soccer Association. So seeing what this town has gone through, I appreciate the people that you have and the opportunities that you provide up here, and we'd like to be a part of it.
Would you state your name and address for the record, please?
Robert Markley, do you want my personal address or business address? Business
fine.
7168 Zionsville Road, Indianapolis, Indiana, 46268.
All right, thank you. I'm anxious to learn more about what it is you do. This is pretty fascinating, cutting-edge stuff.
It is, it is. You know, we actually have a couple of Fortune 100 companies that we're doing quite a bit of their R&D work for them. We are, even being founded in 2013, I know that we're only five and a half years old now. Man, time flies. But that still makes us one of the oldest independent operators in the United States. So we've really had quite a bit of opportunity to turn the knobs and dials, and we're still finding that we can do things that honestly the equipment manufacturers can't do, these Fortune 100 companies can't do. You know, it's a testament to the talent pool here in central Indiana. You know, I grew up here, have lived in Chicago, lived in Nevada, traveled all over the world, recovering IndyCar engineer. That was my first career, and I'm back here. In fact, that's the type of people that I look for, the challenge-driven individual. So it's been a
Thank you
great
very much,
opportunity
Mr.
for it.
Markley. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Markley this time? All right.
All right, we'll turn it back over to
Yeah,
Alexa.
absolutely. No, I love the fact that, yeah, founded in 2013, you're a veteran in this industry. I was just reading an article today. I think it's a $5-6 million industry. Does that sound right? And has the potential to be.
Billion?
Yes. I'm making it up on the whim. Okay, and I mean, to be 500, you know, in the somewhat near future. So, pretty incredible stuff. So, yeah, it's okay. Okay, so, and as Amanda alluded to, so the types of equipment that would be purchased by Third Dimension and installed and put in service here in Westfield, you know, advanced manufacturing equipment, metal additive, and the equipment that would support that type of equipment. So looking out by the end of year 2021, projecting to make an investment of around $10 million. As I mentioned, there would be some relocating of the employees that are at his Indianapolis location now, but that included, by the end of 2021, you're looking at 22 new full-time employees here in Westfield, at an average hourly wage of almost $28 an hour. Just really quick, that's the building, right, that you guys I know are very familiar with. Construct that spec space there up at 170th and Oak Ridge. And then, I know it's small, but just to kind of give you a sense of what the space is gonna look like, obviously a very open floor plan for all that equipment. And then just as far as just kind of the financial analysis, which I know is very important to you all as you evaluate these types of requests, even with an abatement in place, there would still be property tax revenue generated. Over the life of the abatement, again, we're seeking your support of a traditional 5-year personal property tax abatement. You'd be looking at almost $293,000 in revenue. And then once that personal property abatement rolls off, looking at an annual tax bill of about $83,000. So really, just in conclusion, you know, there are honestly very few companies that do what Third Dimension does. As Bob alluded to, for their out-of-state clients, very, you know, high-end clients, they need to project that high-end image, and I know that Bob is ready and excited to make that happen here in Westfield. I know he'll be a first-class community partner who is going to be very excited to showcase Westfield to his out-of-state clients, right, that he's going to be bringing in. So in addition to the tax revenue that would be generated, even with the abatement in place, we've always got the kind of the annual checks and balances, if you will. And certainly Third Dimension accepts kind of that annual accountability to meet the job and investment goals that we've set forth in the abatement application. So with that, if there are any questions that you have for myself or Bob, we're here to answer those.
All right, council. Any questions? All right. Well, thank you for presenting tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We appreciate it.
All right. This is a council introduction tonight, but it's also up for adoption consideration tonight. We've talked about this in terms of what the abatement would look like, the terms of the abatement, and a little bit about the industry in question. So at this time, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve Resolution 18-115.
All right, Mr. Hoover made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a second by Bob Horkay. Is there any discussion?
I would just comment that this seems like, I mean, I've always been fascinated with this 3D printing. Don't know much about it, would love to learn more about it if I have the opportunity to visit. But it is a very high technology field, and I think it's exciting to get this company in Westfield for their growth.
Very good. Anyone else care to add something? All right, this time, will the clerk please poll council?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you. Very good. Welcome to Westfield. Thank you. All right, next item up is ordinance 18-45, elected official salary ordinance. Ms. Tammy Hefford will give us an overview.
Council President, members of council, Ordinance 1845, the 2019 elected official salary, shows a 3% increase in the mayor, clerk treasurer, and city council salaries. The 3% is consistent with the increase proposed for the non-elected employees. There are no changes currently proposed for the stipends. The 3% increase was included in the budget that was adopted by council on October 22nd. This is the introduction only, and the adoption consideration is on December 20th. By statute, it needs to be adopted by December 31st. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
All right. Is there any questions for Ms. Hefford? All right, this is a council introduction, and it will be up for adoption consideration December 20th at a special meeting to close out the year end. So appreciate your presentation, Tammy. Thank you. Any other comments? All right, we'll move on to ordinance 18-52, Grist Mill Crossing PUD, and Ms. Howard presenting. Is Ms. Howard here tonight?
Sorry, Miss Howard is not doing well this evening. She's under the weather, so she's asked me to stand in for her, so
Very good.
I'm going to do my best.
So Matt Skelton will be presenting.
This item before you is an amendment to allow real estate located currently within the Spring Mill Trails PUD district to be used for a new single-family residential neighborhood. This area represents approximately a 58-acre area just southwest of where Ditch Road and Casey Road come together. Jesse Pullman is representing the petitioner this evening, and I'm going to ask him to kind of outline exactly what they're proposing in the scheme here.
Good evening, President, members of the council. Happy holidays. For the record, Jesse Pullman with On Point Land Matters, presenting this evening on behalf of the applicant, William Trace Development, and Travis May. Travis sends his regrets that he's unable to be here this evening. He had surgery on his arm on Friday, and so he's in the healing process, and hopefully he'll be up and running again here soon. The ordinance in front of you amends the Spring Mill Trails PUD for the 58 acres located on the west side of Ditch Road, south of Casey Road. The existing zoning is the mixed-use district and commercial district of the Spring Mill Trails PUD. The ordinance is intended to be, and I'll kind of start here, there's some discussion about whether it's an amendment or whether it's a replacement ordinance. The idea is because of the dated nature of this ordinance that it would be a standalone, so we carried in a lot of the standards from the existing PUD that would otherwise apply into this ordinance. So it's really more of a form over function. It will be much like the other neighborhood pockets that you have with Water's Edge, Williams Trace, Shelton Cove, excuse me, and Spring Orchard. Then you have the Gristmill Crossing residential piece. So just as a point of clarification. The existing zoning permits multifamily and business uses, as well as a limited expansion of the residential District 2. So the zoning request is to allow single family for the entire 58 acres. The proposed neighborhood provides for a continued transition between the existing neighborhoods to the north and the future commercial areas along State Highway 32 to the south, which are currently slated to be developed this spring. In addition, the proposed land use is able to adequately address the site design that accommodates the existing site constraints of the property, that includes floodplain to the west, includes, a legal drain to the south, sanitary sewer to the north, and then you have a drainage easement and perimeter landscaping along Ditch Road, so the site's relatively contained. The residential development is proposed to consist of two areas. Area 1 is to be known as the Highlands at Gristmill Crossing, which is immediately adjacent to Water's Edge, and will consist of traditional single-family homes consistent with those that you see in Water's Edge and Williams Trace. Based on current market conditions, homes are anticipated to sell in the lower to upper $300,000. Area 2 is to be known as the Meadows at Gristmill Crossing, and it's a transition between the traditional single-family of Area 1 and the commercial area to the south, and it's planned to include single-story lifestyle homes, which based on the current market conditions are anticipated to be in the mid to lower $200,000. As depicted in the application and exhibits, the ordinance incorporates the development and design standards with the existing Spring Mill Trails PUD, which was adopted in 2011, while also modernizing the ordinance to cross-reference and incorporate the current city's UDO standards. William Trace Development believes that the proposed neighborhood accommodates the logical development of the property and provides for an appropriate transition of land uses that are consistent with the economic and design objectives of the comprehensive plan. So in closing, if you have any questions this evening that we can take with this as we move through the public process, we'd be more than happy to hear those. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you for your time.
Since there is at least one residence I know from Water's Edge in the room tonight, could you comment on the clubhouse?
So the clubhouse, and for those of you that may not be aware, in 2011, when Spring Mill Trails PUD was adopted, none of the current developers are part of that project. So you had a master developer that had proposed a comprehensive development and then is no longer part of that. So you have several developers and property owners within the overall project that are attempting to pick up those pieces. So with that being said, there's an element of an amenity center that was required under the existing PUD. Mr. May is attempting to kind of take point on that and in coordination with the other developers to try to locate that here in the northeast corner of the site that we're showing. I'm happy to share and make available. We had a neighbors meeting a couple weeks ago. We had a couple residents show up. We shared with them what was being proposed there. That's obviously separate from this particular petition, but the idea would be that that amenity center would serve still all those single-family residences that are there in an attempt to try to, as I mentioned, pick up those pieces. So right now, the development plan shows a pool house with a pool, as well as a few, I think, ancillary uses on the site as well. But we can definitely make those available for the council and any neighbors that are interested in it.
That's fine. But you use the term try. Is this more than a try to get this done, or?
So it's slated to be developed this spring. So the development plan, the detailed development plan has been filed with the city. It's scheduled to go to TAC this month. This piece is part of a larger, multiple parcels, and so there's a master secondary plat that's just trying to start to divide that up so that it can be subdivided and sold and transferred in ownership. So assuming that the development plan review goes as planned, and then obviously the residential piece is an instrumental part of it because it'll help provide some additional capital to build it. The idea would be is that it will be built this spring. I think the goal for Mr. May is to have the pool open by Memorial Day.
All right. Any questions for the petitioner?
I have a number of comments, and I think the petitioner is aware of a lot of my comments. I have to go all the way back to when this was Eagle Station PUD, and then finally Spring Mill Trails. And this has become quite a cluster, in my opinion, and it's really a shame. And I keep going back to the Spring Mill Trails and seeing that there's all these requirements. But the problem is that it's portioned out for the entire, I don't know how many acres Spring Mill Trails is, but it's a lot. And so like there's 4 amenity, or 2 major amenity centers, if I'm not mistaken, including 4 pools that are required throughout the PUD. You know, and we don't have one yet. You know, it's stuff like that that really concerns me. And I said, I really can't support something moving forward till we meet the obligations. You know, people bought into this community with that understanding. Now they're not seeing anything. And as long as we continue to let development happen without meeting those things, I worry we're never going to get them for those residents. So that's my concern right now. So,
And I appreciate that comment, and I think, you know, not necessarily speaking on behalf of Mr. May, but I think the idea is trying to make that better. As I noted, none of the current developers were part of that original PUD, and so they're trying to pull it all together. And when you've got multiple owners with multiple interests, and you have developers trying to do a project that's viable, that's
well,
extra.
Right now, the problem is no one wants to pay.
It's true.
And so we're
yeah.
left with the situation.
Yeah.
And we had this happen, something similar with the common area in another PUD many years ago. And that's what concerns me. So, and again, as long as we continue to let this go, we're going to keep seeing the problem. My other concern, some of the standards you're proposing seem even lower than what was in the original PUD. In terms of on-site landscaping per lot, those are not meeting the requirements that we saw in the previous version. Some of the architectural requirements, I'm seeing snout-nosed garages, those kind of things. So I have concerns that minimum standards aren't high enough.
I have a couple of comments as well. I do have some concerns with this becoming single-family residential. That doesn't mean that I wouldn't approve it. I would like some kind of assurance that the commercial south of this is going to develop in the same time frame. We continue to add housing and we don't get the commercial which was intended for this area. Another concern is the amenity center and the amount of parking and how parking will be dealt with there. That's a very small site, and I don't want to get this other land approved for something else if part of that might be needed for parking. So I need some assurances that parking can be addressed while keeping those vehicles out of Water's Edge neighborhood on their streets, which I think is the obvious place that much of that will go. I think there's also been some discussion about the southern entrance and that needing to line up with Casey Acres entrance. And that may be something that's ongoing, but as this moves through the process, that definitely needs to be addressed.
And that is something we went through TAC this month, so that is something we're working with the city engineer on, so you'll likely see that shift south.
Any other comments?
I have one or two. Jesse, could you share the approximate size of that amenity area?
I apologize, I don't know off the top of my head. I think it's roughly a 2-acre parcel, but I don't know the
It's
details.
not like a
of it.
half acre?
No.
But it's not included in this, it's exclusive?
Correct,
It's
correct.
exclusive of
Yeah,
it?
it's not part of this zoning amendment.
If you relocate that entrance, how will that impact the number, or what, have you done any pencil?
Yeah, preliminarily, I think it will be a wash. We're working with the county surveyor on the impact to the legal drain and what that looks like. But I think, based on the last conversations I saw as late as Friday, The lots will probably still be about the same.
Would that change the land mass? I know there are some challenges out there with some drainage.
As far as its impact on like the pond sizes or anything?
No, just the shape, size.
No, I think what you'll see is essentially this road will get pulled down this direction, so end up with additional open space in between those two areas.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anyone else care to comment?
I thought the amenity center was part of the deal, but it's not a done deal yet?
It'll be constructed as part of the infrastructure with this site. So the idea is both this residential pocket as well as the amenity center will be done this spring, started this spring with all the infrastructure and dirt work.
It needs to be a done deal and not a
Yeah.
possibility.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I have one more comment, if you wouldn't mind. There's kind of an administrative problem to me in terms of piecing this out and not having it be part of Spring Mill Trails anymore. When you look back at the Spring Mill Trails, which I did, a lot of different things are gonna be impacted, because you take out a portion of the real estate, you take out, you know, in terms of the max number of units available to be developed and all these things, in terms of also the amenities and who's paying into those, because it's not included in the overall with this, it's separate. All these different facets come back to actually impact Spring Mill Trails. So it can't be taken in a vacuum where we just piece it out, because it does materially change what can and can't be done in Spring Mill Trails. So that's just something I really want our staff probably to look at.
Yeah, and we're happy to talk to them some more. Substantively, it doesn't change it because it will still fall under the same HOA covenants in the documents. So whether we call it this PUD as an amendment or a standalone PUD, if it gives comfort, we can go back and revisit whether we call an amendment and still make it part of the Spring Mill Trails PUD, but it will, from my experience, it will make the new ordinance much more cumbersome to apply for the private side, the public side, and future homeowners, but that's something we can go back and visit. Ultimately, I think the concept as we look at this project is does this make sense? If we look at what we're trying to do to make this better and move it forward, does this project make sense to the alternative that could otherwise be developed? And I think from our perspective, it makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, the least of which is a lot has happened since 2011. I know that you've had a vision that was presented by that original developer, but they're not here anymore. And so you've got a lot of folks that are trying to make it better. And in the meantime, facing all the challenges that come with that, the same frustrations that you may have are also had from the developer side, trying to make it work where it makes sense, and in some cases it doesn't.
I
And
don't
this is one.
understand why we can't just amend Spring Mill Trails applicable to this piece of real estate. And why are we taking it out? When we didn't do that for all the others, but we're gonna do it for this one.
All the others, what are the others?
The other subdivision areas we've approved in here are all still part of Spring Mill Trails.
In short, because in this case, we're changing the zoning from the mixed use to the commercial. Or, I'm sorry, from the mixed use and commercial to residential. The other neighborhoods didn't require zone changes to them to be developed because they were able to develop under the district areas of the original PUD.
Well, they still all had amendments to them.
Water's Edge did. I don't know that the others did. And Water's Edge was a building material amendment.
Well, I will let you know, we will look at this, we have looked at this, and we will look at this further, but it really is, either way you go, there's gonna be a little bit of confusion, and from our perspective, whatever is easiest to administer is whatever it's called. I'm less concerned with the name and more concerned with how it functions.
Well, and I'm thinking more about the overall PUD and not just this.
It's, same here, that's part of what I'm talking about.
And for what it's worth, we're on the same page as well. If it turns out there's another route that's better for everybody involved, we're on board. Having done this enough, we thought this was the cleanest and least cumbersome for everybody to be able to wrestle with. But appreciate the comments.
I don't have any new concerns to add, but I would echo that all of what we've discussed concerns me as well. I'm with you on the whatever makes sense, not getting hung up on details of, is it really, truly, in every legal sense, part of the Spring Mill Trails PUD, if it needs to be managed in a different way, but the end product comes out more towards the vision that we were all hoping this parcel would eventually come to. That's where it really needs to go, and we certainly need to make certain that whatever it is that we're doing helps foster the commercial growth that might actually be coming time for out there pretty soon here, and we don't want to just keep looking at the residential.
Anyone else? I think, Jesse, you've heard from council members, and we're
Appreciate
all pretty much in agreement on all these things. And we appreciate staff working to clean up the language and making it administratable, because if we don't have something that we can look to and enforce, it gets really, really dicey. So I appreciate your work on this, and I think your direction has been sort of clear from the dais tonight.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. I'm optimistic we'll get there.
All right.
Thank you.
Very good. Well, we thank you. Maybe you can clean up some of this stuff and take care of the residents out there in a better way.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay, so this was a council introduction tonight. There will be an APC public hearing on this on December 17th. I'm sorry. Yes, December 17th. All right, so we'll move on to ordinance 18-53, 181st Street PUD amendment, the Grand Junction Tap Room Stage.
Good evening, members of the council. For the record, Dane Crabtree with the Economic and Community Development Department. The item before you is an introduction of ordinance 18-53, a proposed amendment to the 181st Street Planned Unit Development specific to Parcel A, which is located at the southeast corner of 181st Street and Sun Park Drive. The proposed amendment would permit an outdoor event stage on the property adjacent to 181st Street in the front yard of the Grand Junction Brewing Production Facility and Tasting Room. This item will receive a public hearing at the December 17th Advisory Plan Commission meeting, and John Knight from Grand Junction Brewing is present this evening and would like to make a brief presentation.
Thank you, Dean.
Good evening, council. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight to discuss this amendment to the 181st Street PUD that would allow for an outdoor patio stage at the Grand Junction Brewing Company taproom location. Wanted to go ahead and give you guys a little bit of history on how this has kind of developed over the last 2 to 2.5 months, and also to address any potential concerns. I think that's important to do this the right way and to make sure that we go through the proper motions. On October 4th, we met on site. I met with Kevin Todd, Dane Crabtree from the planning department, TJ Wartenberger as well, the building commissioner, and Gary Harling, the division chief and fire marshal. And we identified the best location in those that were there at the meeting for this stage. Considerations were given to access into this property. You have access to the west, so a driveway access, as you can see there. We have another access point to the east. We also have a tenant to the east. We also have a tenant to our west and south. And what we decided upon, and the reason that that stage is pushed back a little bit from the existing patio, is there was a consideration given by Gary in regards to Gary Harling, the fire marshal, in regards to people congregating at the front entrance. He wanted to move it away as much from that front entrance as possible, so it was a mainly a safety concern in regards to the location of the stage. And this is a stage that's going to be approximately 18 by 25 feet in dimension. I think to give you a general idea of the footprint is probably similar to what we have at the city market that we do in the summer, just around the corner here. It will become an extension of the existing patio. So we are going to use the same materials. We'll have a stone base to it. It will have cedar wood, which will complement the existing patio structure, and will certainly be an improvement to the patio itself. The structure that we occupy obviously is a pole barn. It's a metal pole barn. We're going to continue to use wood materials and kind of higher end cedar and, as mentioned, a stone foundation or stone base for the structure. So we certainly think it's an improvement to what's currently there, and we also think it blends very well into the existing patio. So essentially would become an extension of that patio that is already there. One of the other, I think, questions or concerns that came up was, the intended use. Why do we need it? Grand Junction Brewing Company Taproom, as most of you know, hosts a number of fundraising events for the community throughout the year. In 2018 alone, we've done 25 fundraising events. The different organizations that we've done those events for have been Westfield Youth Assistance, the Westfield Education Foundation, the Suicide Walk, MFest 2018, which was raising money to support a local family that was fighting cancer, the Peyton Manning Children's Hospital, Friends of Jacqueline Foundation, Special Olympics, and various other local organizations, the Indiana Chapter of Suicide Prevention, the Hamilton County Humane Society, and the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Part of the need that's come about is that we need a focal point, we need a stage when these organizers of these events are putting them on. Obviously, having a raised platform and having that availability out on our patio makes sense. The second reason is we do provide hospitality to a number of guests that we have at Grand Park. So they come and obviously in between games and after games, they'll come to our location. And live music is something that we've had a number of requests for. Yes, we can play live music indoors, however, we're a bit confined. The majority of the structure is used, over 75% of the structure is actually used for production and actually making our product, so it has all of our brewing tanks and so forth. And as mentioned, we have gone through several different steps in this process, and just to give you an idea, on December 5th, we had actually submitted the plans for this stage to the Department of Homeland Security, the Division of Fire and Building Safety with the state of Indiana. On December 5th, we received notification back from them of our exemption to the state of Indiana's construction design release process. So we have received that, so that is on record. I'm more than happy to forward that to council as well. If you have any questions at this time, I'd certainly entertain them. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Which way is the stage going to face?
The stage is actually going to face back towards the building.
Back to the south, then?
Back to the south. Correct, sir.
All right, any other questions for John?
I have a couple.
Okay.
John, is the setback, the 21.2, is that from the edge of the road? Or what's the line there?
The actual setback on the stage, so this has gone through TAC, and the only feedback that we received from TAC was they wanted it to be a foot from the sidewalk. So we couldn't encroach right on the sidewalk, obviously, so they wanted the stage itself to be a foot south. So they wanted to make sure that there was a foot in between the southern edge of that sidewalk and the far northern edge of the stage. And what you'll see is that dimension there, that 21.2, that is actually from the side of the road, so the southern edge of 181st Street, to the southern edge of the sidewalk. So the stage itself would be, if we stayed within the foot, we may come a little slightly, south of that. But if we, for example, if we went a foot, it would be 22.2. So 22 feet, 2 inches.
Who owns the property?
The property is currently owned by the CH Group.
Then you're a tenant?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Do we have any other situations, and I'm trying, oh, I'm sorry. Do we have any other situations where we have a structure that close to the sidewalk?
I mean, in our city,
Yeah.
yeah. There's a house on Park Street that's right on, no, but yeah, there's lots of instances that are that close. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, I don't know, I can't. Most of them are probably in developed areas.
Yeah, and we don't have like some kind of standard that would, I mean, a setback doesn't, you don't have to have a setback from a sidewalk, right?
Well, I mean, if you think about a lot of newer urban setting type construction, I mean, these things are right on the property line. I mean, actually, his existing
Well, that's
restaurant
true.
is
And-
right on the right of way. I
Yeah,
mean,
and I guess it's just a context thing,
Yeah.
because out here, you wouldn't have that. I mean, this is gonna be a little different.
the one thing when we spoke with him is this is, even though it may be permanently installed, by no means is it's not like building a building on, something. I'm imagining that when your use is no longer present on this property, that the stage doesn't need to be there either, so.
That is correct.
There's probably a way to memorialize that somehow.
Do we need to have like operating hours or any of those use considerations in the PUD?
Without them, our existing standards would permit live music until 10 o'clock. But it can't be audible. There's limitations on how it's audible. And I might defer to Brian on this a little bit. The nuisance rules are a lot different than land use rules.
I just didn't
The
want
noise
John to have to
ordinance
come
would
back
still
and get
apply.
another amendment, so.
Noise ordinance would still apply.
And did you say that was 10 o'clock?
Well, that's, the nuisance ordinances, it will allow noise till 10 o'clock, but only at certain levels. I mean, so that goes for anything, beeping things and music and everything.
Which we close at 10, so conveniently, so it works well.
Right. Any other comments?
I have another question. I'm not I don't know much about putting on programs like this, but it doesn't look like you've got a lot of room in front of the stage if you have a big crowd. I mean, you might have,
Yeah, you're looking at approximately 35 feet from the front of the building to the edge of the stage.
but if you had a big crowd, well, that wouldn't hold them.
If there's a big crowd in front of this stage, that would certainly present itself. Obviously with the confined space that we have, that is something that, obviously we would address and would be part of, our existing occupancy. We'd have to adhere to those same kind of requirements. What I can tell you is that the majority of time, and I don't want to sit in front of you tonight and make promises about certain things that we're not willing to live by all the time, but the overwhelming majority of the time, these are going to be acoustic acts. So these are going to be single musicians with a guitar. You may find duets. We happen to have a pretty popular duet that plays at our pub location from time to time. But the majority of time, it's going to be single acoustic acts. I think you would find it very, very rare for us to have a rock band playing on this stage. Again, it's an 18 by 24, 25-foot stage. It's not going to accommodate bands of that size.
Yeah, it's a pretty small footprint.
It's about, it's a,
All right, any other comments? All right, this will move on to APC. Did you have one, Chuck?
No.
Okay.
I'm good.
This will move on to APC, and they have a public hearing December 17th.
okay, thank you, council.
Thank you, Mr. Knight.
Appreciate it.
Ordinance 18-54, Monon Crossing, PUD. Jonathan,
Evening, Council, Mayor.
good evening.
If I had known I could wear my Boy Scout uniform tonight, probably would have worn something different. I don't know if it still fits me, but I think I looked good in it when I was younger. Up for introduction tonight is the Monon Crossing PUD at the property of 827 State Road 32 East. This is located on the intersection of State Road 32 and Spruce Lane. It's approximately 3.4 acres in size, and the proposed PUD will change the AGSF1 agriculture and single-family residential zoning to an enhanced general business zoning. They are also currently going through the primary plat and overall development plan process as well. Here tonight is Jesse Pullman from On Point Land Matters to represent. He would like to give a short presentation, and staff is available for questions afterwards.
Good evening, President and members of the council again. Jesse Pullman with On Point Land Matters. I'm here with Pat Boyle and Aaron Boyle with Midland Atlantic Properties, who are here in the audience with me. As Jonathan mentioned, this is an introduction of a change of zoning for the 3.4 acres located on the southwest corner of State Road 32 and Wheeler Road. As you may recall, about half of this site was located as part of the Trails PUD back in 2015, while the other half is still currently zoned AGSF1. So the requested zoning will accommodate the consolidation and redevelopment of the various parcels for a commercial development that we're currently calling Monon Crossing. The property's characteristics function much like an outlot located between 175th Street and State Road 32, and so is reasonably expected to develop similarly to the surrounding commercial properties, including the Trails of Westfield, Monon Marketplace, the Henke 31 Center, and Wheeler Landing. As depicted in the application and exhibits, the proposed ordinance establishes uses and standards that are consistent with the 32 overlay, as well as the city's comprehensive plan and those standards of the surrounding projects. As you review the proposed ordinance, you'll be familiar with much of the language that's in there, which incorporates standards that are consistent with the Trails PUD, as well as the recently adopted Wheeler Landing PUD. Because the end users are not yet known, the buildings have not been designed. So as a result, you'll notice the character exhibit, we've attempted to incorporate images that we believe capture the desired quality and character that the city has expressed in our pre-filing meetings, highlighting specific architectural elements that we heard were important, and that also capture compliance with the city's highest set of architectural commercial standards of the State Road 32 overlay. In advance of our public hearing in January, we'd like to invite you to our scheduled open house for adjacent property owners that will be held next Tuesday, December 18th at 6 o'clock, and that will be held at the meeting room in Hampton Inn. So that's 6 o'clock on the 18th. So in closing, if you have any questions or comments that we can take with this as we move through the public process, I'd be more than happy to hear those. Otherwise, again, I'd like to thank you for your time tonight, and again, happy holidays.
Thank you, Jesse. Any questions for Jesse?
One thing that we need to consider through the process is what these buildings will look like from our trail as it is elevated at that point. So we need to have something in the PUD that talks about not having, what the roof lines look like, what these look like from that trail, because a lot of people will see it from there from a different angle than what we might normally see on a street. So just something that needs to be considered.
Mr. Lehman.
So the concept of that two-story Wendy's is just concept?
Correct. That is a building that Mid-Atlantic has built in another community, but as an example of the offsets and the modulation, that's an example. The primary aspect of pulling that example in was identifying the roofline enhancement and the outdoor seating there.
Approximately, what's the distance from your property over to that bridge, do you know? Just roughly?
I don't know, but I can find out.
Probably through this process, we would like to see, or I would like to see, a lot of visuals on height. Because I assume you're gonna be looking at a pretty good masonry wall there.
We'll take a look at that. I know that in some of our pre-meetings with folks, that was something that was talked about. So we have our engineers and our architect are currently kind of going through the exercise, working with the city to get some of those plans so we can better understand the specifics of height and grade. So we'll definitely be revisiting that with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Can you explain the signage a little bit? Because you're asking for one monument sign, center only, and then also an entrance sign, center only, but the other stuff still applies?
Yeah, so the UDO would allow for a subdivision of this nature to have a monument sign on 32. So we've adopted that and pulled into it similar standards that are along that frontage with Mona Marketplace and the trails. And then at the two entrance signs at 175th Street, the UDO would allow those to have signage where you identify the center, but not necessarily tenants. And so similar again to the Mona Marketplace and the Trails project, maintain the same size of sign, but just allowing tenants to be put on that sign at those entrances.
That non-residential center sign seems pretty large for this size of project.
It's consistent with Mona Marketplace to the east, for what it's worth.
Thank you.
Right. Anyone else? All right, this too will move on to the APC for a public hearing January 7th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ordinance 18-55, adopting updated policies, procedures, and fee schedules.
Council President, members of the council, Ordinance 1855, adopting policies, procedures, and fee schedules, is an annual process that we started last year. The departments review the schedules and policies and make changes and additions as necessary. The exhibits are posted on the agenda for your review. This is the introduction only tonight, and adoption consideration is on December 20th. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? I know there were revisions as late as yesterday on this regarding fire. And go ahead,
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Cindy.
I have one about the investment policy, which was Exhibit J.
Yes.
What changes have been made in that one with
Sure.
this revision?
The only change was to update the policy expiration date from January 1st of 2019 to January 1st of 2023. There's a statutory requirement that it can only go out 4 years. So every 4 years, this will be updated to have a new expiration date. There have been no other changes in the investment policy.
Okay, we might want to consider changing one thing. You know, we actually have an internal control committee of the council, and you're familiar with that. And it doesn't at all speak to that, and instead it talks about internal control, external review. And in that same regard, it also mentions the city's finance committee, which we don't have one.
Great, yes, we will look at that and then have revisions for the December 20th adoption. We'll get those out to you as they become available.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. This will be up for adoption consideration at our December 20th meeting. Thank you. And the last item on the agenda is approval of our 2019 meeting dates. You've had those circulated as part of this agenda tonight, and the second meetings listed are always discretionary, and so I'd just like a voice approval of those meeting dates tonight. And they are subject to change.
Can I make a comment before we do that?
Well, certainly.
And I've had messages from the community of people requesting that we don't have meetings, if possible, that we do any of the big public business during fall break, spring break, or, you know, where the majority of people are gone for those purposes.
I did look at, are there any particular dates? I know we're good on spring break.
Except
I
for
don't-
most people get back and then the meeting's the very next day. So that's a consideration too. A lot of people are unaware of what, I want to relay concerns that I've had before we make a decision.
I understand.
And then the fall break one, I think that might be fall break for Westfield. It was this year, I think, that week.
So fall break is when? October 14th?
Not sure.
Okay. All right.
Someone else might.
Well, I understand what you're saying, and it's something to be aware of. Sometimes projects are sensitive, and we don't control necessarily how they flow through, and petitioners count on those second Monday meetings. But we can certainly consider that and try and see what we can do.
And I'm wondering,
There's-
when we have situations like that, maybe even being able, like, for the spring break, going to Tuesday instead of Monday, just so people are not hit, and then they're like, what? We didn't even know there was anything. And I don't know if you guys are, or if I'm the only one that feels like this, but it's been a concern brought to me, so.
We can talk about it among ourselves. My thought is that there's a consistency and people know. So you change the meeting, they're expecting a meeting on the second Monday of the month, for example, and then we don't hold it, and that can be the opposite end of the situation. So it's hard to please everybody, but certainly I'm open for discussion on that point.
I would just comment that, I mean, I agree that, I think once we start moving meetings around, that becomes dangerous. It's very difficult to keep up anyway, and I think people rely on Monday evening meetings. If there's obviously a holiday on Monday, that's pretty obvious that you're not gonna be meeting. We have had cases where we've had sensitive PUDs that have been delayed as a result of that, but that is at the petitioner's discretion. And I don't believe that we should be not having meetings just because there is a spring break. Like I say, we can deal with specific things as we have in the past and perhaps delay those, but sometimes things are time sensitive. And I don't think we should be delaying something that is time sensitive. I mean, to me, it's up to the petitioner.
I certainly agree with not changing the meeting day to something other than Monday, because that is such a long-standing date that would cause its own level of confusion. I aged out of public school kids quite a few years ago, and I was just glancing at the school site, but my recollection was fall break, and most of the others tended to seem like they hit my calendar later in the month. They rarely interfered with a first meeting. They would interfere with a second meeting. And we've sort of got an ad hoc policy where we work with the developers in a discussion to try to heavily encourage them sometimes to kind of figure out their staging of their presentations so that maybe we can avoid that. But I don't know that we want to start making a written policy that says you can't do certain business at certain meetings, because there are things that'll be time sensitive that shouldn't be made to wait for something that might cause a different problem. I always fear the law of unintended consequences.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just basically, if we start moving dates around, it's gonna affect other meetings, APC or other things that come along. I think our consistency is probably more important than, I mean, as I look at these dates, I'm sensitive to the request or comments, but we've been doing it a long time. And to start manipulating dates probably isn't a good thing. And I appreciate, saying that, we won't make decisions of impact at a given time, but I think that to a point, that's almost, it's just not good policy at this point.
I tend to agree.
I mean, I can think of several PUDs that in the recent past have been delayed because, for that very reason, but that was something the petitioner agreed to. It didn't affect their timelines, and I don't think we should set that as a policy that you can't have anything during those weeks. I don't think it's good policy for the city.
Well, good discussion here. Thank you for that. At this time, I would recommend that we approve the 2019 meeting dates. So I'd like to take a voice vote. All those in favor of approving these dates as stated on the agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, our meeting dates for 2019 are approved. Thank you. At this time, residents who wish to comment, have comments to make to council on items not on the agenda may do so at this time. And I have a card from Jen Smith. She would like to address us at this time. And would you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Yes. My name is Jen Smith, and I live at 16941 Joliet Road. I've been around a while, but don't frequent this too often. I was a member of the 2020 Comprehensive Master Plan as a member of the steering committee with Joe Plankus and served under him on that group. I've also was a Washington Township Parks Board member for quite a number of years and was a Parks Director for Washington Township between 2013 and 2015. During my time, I worked under David Gill, who was then the Township Trustee and the advisory group, and I remember when I found out about the, well, you can imagine my surprise, I found out about a $15 million parks tax that was coming through. And I called Jim Payton, who, I was shocked and was trying to get more information, and he was like, I know, we used to run things tighter than the bark on a birch tree, which is pretty customary for the way that we address parks and recreation at that level. Very few townships have parks and recreation. It's a luxury that we do, as most of you are probably aware by the generous donation from Sheila McGregor that brought this. But there's just no way that most of our citizenry could have expected this tax to coming. It's just not a customary part of township taxes that you would be expecting to see something of that magnitude. We all love parks, but this was a bit of a shock. The first point that I'd want to make is that parks don't exist in a vacuum. The township has parks and recreation, the city does, Hamilton County does, and when you count the amount of green space that we've got in Parks and Rec, it's over 906 acres, a lot to be proud of for our whole community, 18 parks and 6 linear trails. We can be calm and proceed in a measured fashion to acquire more, much the same way that we always have. And the real issue comes as our population grows in the future. We meet and exceed actually our existing needs. It's for the future growth. But the question that many of us were looking at with that was, why would you create a tax on existing residents to create parks for future residents that don't live here yet? That was one of the purposes in the Comprehensive Master Plan, which is that we acquire green space as development occurs. And I think that you probably heard a lot from the members of the Conservancy group as well, too, who reiterated the same sorts of desires, that green space is acquired. And certainly in your position, you've seen some wonderful times when that's occurred, and maybe some where you wish we could do a better job for our community in terms of the amount of green space. But what came to our attention as the group of us who were working on the remonstrance for the tax and just trying to understand what we had is we have no way of accounting for any of the development that's occurring in any of the subdivisions as they develop. And there are some beautiful things like Chatham Hills and their 40 acres of trees and nature and trails, and golf courses and their Championship Pete Dye golf course, the nature preserves, the clubhouse at Village Farms with tennis courts and swimming pools, or any of those at Countryside and Centennial and the sledding hill. So as we were trying to say, what green space do we have, there was no way that when we talked to the development staff of accounting for that kind of open space and parks and recreation. But all of these create outdoor recreation for our citizens that are very important. When you look at parks and recreation, probably the most important place for daily activities. I represent a group, so I think I get...
No, it's just 3 minutes, but can you wrap up?
Sure. So anyway, the most important thing is like the popsicle test on that. So can a kid take a popsicle from their house, go to their local playground, meet their kids, come back before the popsicle melts? That's where you want to have your best parks and recreation at. we're doing that. That's what we're taxing people to as part of our 2020 Comprehensive Master Plan, but we have no way of accounting for it. So, you know, that was just to make some awareness on your part that that's the case, and we would like to see some way probably for some of that accounting to occur. The other part is just the recognition that taxes don't exist in a vacuum. There is a group that has filed a remonstrance petition. Those signatures have been accepted by the, certified by the voting registration office, and now we'll be waiting for the next steps on this. So we just kind of wanted to make you aware of some of that.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Do we have anyone else that would like to address the council on issues not on the agenda tonight? All right. So at this time, we'll start off with council comments. Mr. Hoover, you have a report from APC?
APC met last Monday evening. We had a pretty short meeting. We held 2 public hearings on development plans and secondary plats for the Southwind subdivision and Grand Park. So it was a less than 10-minute meeting, I believe.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that short report, too. Any other council comments? I'd just like to say how much I appreciate the scouts being here, Troop 152. It's a pleasure having you. And so we recognize that you guys are doing a lot of good works in our community. We want to thank you for what you've done in the past and what you will do in the future. And we appreciate you spending time with us tonight. And at this, if there's no other comments from council, I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Rake. And Scouts, have you ever had a more exciting evening? Was that great or what? Yes, sir. Merit badge for you. All right. No, we are glad you're here. It is government in action, fellas. That's great. Last week, in continuing our dialogue with the land of Japan, we were invited back to Chicago. Todd and I were to further discuss with the General Consul Ito that we told you about, I think, last month. He's very interested in developing businesses here in Westfield, and also, as I think I told you, to arrange, we're talking about a sports contest with Grand Park and with the country of Japan as they prepare for the Olympics in 2020. We were invited to stay for another dinner, and I'm very happy to say that the menu was roast chicken and mashed potatoes. It was great. So we expect the Consul General will visit Grand Park. He wanted to come now, and we kind of told him it might be best if we wait till spring. So we'll polish up and have him down here. Westfield and Lights was, gee, Smithers, was that just last week? Week before?
Yeah,
It's a beautiful evening. Little wet, little windy, little muddy, but it went well. Your staff did a fantastic job under some grueling conditions, so thank you. I think that was just another great event and tradition growing here in Westfield. Tomorrow at around, I think, 10, 12, and most of the day, the Indiana Economic Development Commission will be holding their, I don't know if it's an annual meeting, but it will be held an all-day session at the Event Center at Grand Park, and the governor will be here. So we've polished up the Event Center for a winter production out there. We'll have some people that I'm sure have not been here before, so that'll be a wonderful thing for Westfield. You know, tragically, we've had several accidents at 31 and 38, In fact, we've asked NDOT to take a look at that area. There's something that is, there's too much visibility, I don't know, too much speed. But unfortunately, there was an accident there this morning. It involved Todd Bertrand's sister. Her name is Alicia Amsbury. She is currently at St. Vincent 86th Street. Had surgery on her legs and ankle today, and I guess she's in for at least a 3-month ordeal of healing and another surgery. So if you would, keep Todd and his sister and their families in your prayers. I guess this is probably, we have one more meeting, I guess, short meeting on the 20th, as we normally do, to close it out. So other than that, that ties up 2018. Thank you, council, for everything that you have all done, and I want to wish all of you and everybody here a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I'm finished.
All right, very good. At this time, I would like to have a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
I have a motion by Bob Horky, second by Ms. Biljerick. All those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Awesome.